are terrible. Before we begin, Ashley, please tell people where they can find you.
At Ashley Wentz TV, at YMets Pod on all socials for all of our stuff. You guys want to stay informed, stay included, all that.
Yeah, at Sam Croston1 on Twitter, at Sam_Croston on Instagram, at YMetsPod everywhere else. Again, we just recently eclipsed 15,000 followers. Thank you so much, everybody, for your support. We really, really appreciate it. And I can't believe how many people listen to this, considering how badly our team is.
People are taking a little joy in our misery, and that's okay. We signed up for that with our Dodgers following. That's all right.
Right.
Yes, the Mets get swept out of LA, blown out of the water. I mean, we kind of said it heading into this series. I would have been happy to take one game of this series with the way the Mets are playing. Unfortunately, that was not even possible. They lost last night in a game that was 8-2 loss to the Dodgers, and it just shouldn't have been like that. We're gonna get into it right now, but how the score ended up 8-2 in that game, I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
Me too. And you want to know the funny thing, and I don't know if you're going to agree with this.
Let's hear
Normally, I feel like I'd have more to say about an 8-2 loss, but honestly, all of those runs were, in my opinion, almost like garbage runs coming in garbage time because the Mets were going to lose either way. I'm not even that mad that the score was 8-2. I'm mad that it seems like once the Mets get behind, which feels like every night, there's no way for them to recover. Like they just don't win games. Like the score matters less to me right now than the deep-rooted not winning issues.
If you're a Mets fan or if you're a Dodgers fan, like just open question to the group. Did you at any point in this series, one time, feel like the Mets were gonna win whatever game they were playing? I think the answer to that is no. Even when it was a close game last night, you sort of knew something was gonna happen. You knew the spark wasn't there. But I want to go through one moment. We have to address it off the top. I have some bigger picture things to say in terms of David Stearns, Carlos Mendoza, because we are just in rock bottom hell of losing 8 in a row. The sky's falling in New York. The sky's falling. But if we want to talk about one moment of yesterday's game that kind of took what was a somewhat close game into a non-competitive game, here we go again. Francisco Lindor not charging a ground ball in it was Teoscar Hernandez who hit the ground ball to him. Lindor doesn't charge it. He's safe at first base. That opens the floodgates. It becomes a blowout. Devin Williams, the wheels fall off the bus. Williams has been good so far. Last night wasn't his night. Shocker, he's pitching against the Dodgers. Francisco Lindor, we covered this on our last episode. It is yet another example of what on earth is going on with this guy. Francisco Lindor has been manning shortstop out there for years. He knows a little dribbler like that, a ball that bounces 3 times, you got to charge it. You got to get him out. Now, to Teoscar Hernandez's credit, he's busting it down the line like it's game 7 of the World Series. He's out there sprinting, and it paid off because he was safe. And then obviously that paved the way for the Dodgers to win the game handily. But first of all, on Lindor's end, what's happening? And on the Dodgers end, that kind of just speaks to everything that's wrong here, right? Like, it sounds so silly, but the example of Teoscar Hernandez, of all guys, busting it down the line, getting an infield single out of that, and then they obviously go on to rally beyond that. That's the type of spark that this Mets team is missing. That's the type of momentum, heart, hustle, whatever you want to call it. No one on the Mets has shown us this year, right? Like it's almost remarkable.
I mean, 100%. You start to wonder, is this rock bottom? I mean, the one thing that you can say, I guess, that's there are actually two bright lights that I've really tried to use to inspire me in the past 24 hours. The first is that the series with the Dodgers is over, and let's at least be open and honest in admitting that this is the best team in baseball, and the three-game sweep was once again proof of that. The other thing that I would just like to point out is that Richard Lovelady is going back to Washington, D.C. And I think that we can all rejoice just a little bit about that.
That might be where he belongs. Although if he ends up back on the Mets, I don't know. The Dickie Lovelady Mets love story, whatever even goes on there, is just sort of endless. So if he ends up back on the Mets, I wouldn't be shocked. The
Yeah.
point being, yes, I'm thrilled the Dodgers series is over for no other reason than this team is off tonight. Goodness gracious, do they need a day off? Now they're going to Chicago to play a good Cubs team too, so it's not like, we're gonna get a rest and reset. But I mean, to me, I want to just talk about the bigger picture because I was listening to Evan and Tiki on WFAN this morning, and they always have some great points. But they
Yep.
really hammered home something that I think just speaks to the entire bigger picture. The Mets and the Dodgers. First of all, we know, right? This was like the marquee matchup last year, stemming from the 2024 NLCS. We know that quite well. How that was only 2 years ago that these teams were super competitive and neck, I have no idea because it feels like watching them on the screen right now, we're light years away from that. Beyond that, these are the two teams, we said it at the start of this series, with the highest payroll in baseball. This was the record-breaking, the most expensive baseball series ever in the history of Major League Baseball with these two payrolls. Dodgers is slightly higher, maybe like 15, 20 million, but all things considered, very similar payrolls in the $400 million range. How on God's green earth are the Dodgers putting out that product with their $400 million and the Mets have Brett Baty batting third in a game you have to win with their $400 million? Now, you can get into the nuances of it. Evan and Tiki went down a whole road of it, of who they're paying. Essentially, there's like $100 million wasted on the books. Frankie Montas is getting 17 million. Jorge Polanco, Marcus Semien, guys that haven't been producing are getting too much money. You're paying Sean Manaea $25 million to be a long reliever, and he hasn't even done that. And that all leads you to a bigger, broader scale issue. Listen, we can talk about Carlos Mendoza, and honestly, if this keeps up, Carlos Mendoza is going to deserve to be fired. But what are we doing with David Stearns? It is time to have a David Stearns discussion, I fear.
I actually let's have a DSD. Let's get into it. No, I actually feel the exact same way because all right, let's back up. Let's just back up for a second. I agree with you to say if you really zoom in to the on-field performance, you're going to see a few things. You're going to see the fact that the Mets are not getting hits, nevertheless scoring. They had 5 hits last night in the game against the Dodgers where Shohei Ohtani was pitching. In the entire series, they had 12 hits. Baseball is a slow game. Not that slow. Again, Shohei Ohtani, we all know what kind of pitcher he is. The man that you are, Shohei. Congratulations. You are impossible. But this is continuous. This is recurrent. It's happening against different pitches. They're in a big time hitting slump. So it wouldn't even matter if the pitchers were doing well, but they're not. But the bullpen's having big issues. The feeling that I continue to have, now zooming out, is that before every season, Mets fans and all of New York sports media will mostly tell you, here are my biggest concerns. That's just what we do. It's who we are. The problem is that this time around, everyone's concerns, small or big, really became the reality. There's somebody who Ashley and I work with who was helping me to write a script the other day, and there was a line in it that said just this, and I thought this was so well written. This was about a sports story. It said something like, "What a gift it is when people exceed expectations." And I thought that really means something to me because you think about 2024, right? A time where I think everyone thought, oh, this is going to be a building year for the Mets in 2025. And they really exceeded expectations. And they tried a couple of things. It was a little experimental, kind of wonky, some strange pieces, and it just worked. This time around, David Stearns kind of did that same thing that he likes to do. And that's a multitude of things that I think are starting to annoy us. But, grabbing a couple of guys who are at the end of their careers, trying to think a little bit about the money, never making a huge splash, putting some guys out of position, and we're just going to throw it all up and decide that hope, in fact, is a strategy. And I think that in New York, that's just not going to work. His experiment so far failed. You want to talk about the fact that, oh, well, the World Series teams in the past had a skid. Show that to me in June or July once we're out of it and the Mets have a good record again. I'm not seeing that right now. I'm not.
No, I mean, a few things are like if we're zooming out to the bigger picture, the Mets have the fifth most losses in baseball since the end of like the second half of last year. This is not a situation where like I saw some graphic like they're barely better than the Rockies and the Twins in that amount of time. Yes, worst records in Major League Baseball since July 28th, 2025. This was a graphic on MLB Network last night. And I'm so sorry, let me correct myself. Actually, the second most losses in baseball behind only the Colorado Rockies. They
That's
are
insane.
literally, legitimately behind the White Sox in that category. The Chicago White Sox, okay? Like we
No.
all know what's been going on out there. I it gets to a point where now, all right, we swallowed the end of the second half of last year, disaster, we got past it, there was an off season, there were additions, whatever. This is the start that you're having. And listen, we've preached patience. We came on here at the beginning of the week and said it's only April 15th, whatever. That remains true. It's literally April 16th. But at some point, somebody has to answer for this mess. And I hate to say it, it has to be David Stearns, right? We are handing out these contracts. I know, like the payroll and okay, he's doing his bargain hunting. How do we have the same payroll, highest in baseball, second highest in baseball, with no more Alonso, no more McNeil, no more Brandon Nimmo? Oh, and by the way, you're still paying those guys to go be on other teams. You're not going to tell me that Brandon Nimmo would have been a better person to have in your outfield last night than MJ Melendez? God love MJ Melendez. He actually was a bright spot last night in terms of everybody who came up. But they just called him from AAA Syracuse. Like, what are we doing, David Stearns? David Stearns to me is gonna have to answer for some things here if this Mets season goes off the rails. And honestly, I'm gonna go as far as to say as his job should be in danger because listen, we got reeled in 2024. He obviously sort of stepped into that year into an already good situation with those guys. Then last year, the wheels fall off the bus. This year, we're still being crafty. We're being creative. We're having four guys play out of position in the infield. It gets to a point where your experiment and your craftiness isn't working. And I'm sorry to say, it gets to the point specifically with some of these pitching additions. Frankie Montas got paid $34 million to do nothing for the Mets, to literally not be on the team this year. They are paying him 17 million. Sean Manaea, I already said it. We handed Sean Manaea $25 million a year because he had one good year in 2024. That's a horrific contract. He's not even in your rotation. AJ Minter's making like 11 million, still hurt, coming back in the middle of the year. Like Freddie Peralta, we have yet to see if that's working out. We still have more hope in that area, but like these pitching additions, it's like, oh, we're going to get crafty. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. You knew pitching was the problem last year. You brought in a grand total of one guy for the rotation this offseason in Peralta. And now, right now, obviously, like the immediate urgency is the hitting. They can't hit. But regardless, this broader conversation of does David Stearns know what he's doing? I think you're going to really start to see that hit a fever pitch.
I mean, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Especially because, listen, it's funny. Like a few things, I just look at the things we're saying and I'm like, that is a little bit funny. Like, I do feel like not 2 days ago, we were like, it's April 14th. Now we're like, it's April 16th. Everything is falling apart. It sucks. Like, but like, honestly, it's hard not to feel that way, I think when you just think about the excitement that you felt 2 years ago, you think about how the brutality of last year. What a bizarre time for us to start this podcast. I'll say it.
Bizarre.
Bizarre. It's like you have this year in 2024 that's so much better than you think it's going to be. A year in 2025 that is significantly worse than you thought it was going to be. Worst case scenario, worst thing possible. Would have been better if they didn't make it and they were like 20 games away. Like it was actually worse because of the way that it ended. Very heartbreaking, very gut-wrenching. And it's hard. I don't envy the position that David Stearns is in because when the season ended last year, how quick were we in all of New York media to be like, something's got to change. Is this guy seriously going to do the same thing again? He's a psycho. He's a psychopath if he thinks that he's going to be able to do all the same things and get a different outcome, right? But the thing is, he reinvented the wheel so much that it's kind of hard to not think, what if? I feel like even then we sort of thought, wow, these were some big moves. These were some risky moves. Like if it all works out, he is going to be a hero because he did something that a lot of people wouldn't have had the guts to do. But if it doesn't work out, to quote Ashley's dad, he should be polishing his resume because it's not gonna, I mean, Ashley's dad, if you think, you guys, that like we're upset, it might be time to have Ashley's dad back on the podcast because some people are just sick of it.
My dad, longtime noted Mets fan, hit his breaking point last night. I was
Yep.
waiting for that to happen because it seemed like he honestly exercised some patience throughout this losing streak. We hadn't heard from him last night, 11:11 p.m. And I quote, Nobody fucks a season faster than the Mets. Highest payroll in baseball. And by April 15th, we are already starting Melendez and Pham looking for a spark. Pathetic excuse for a team. And the Dodgers insult us by just letting Ohtani pitch and not hit. He's the DH every time he pitches, but not against us. Not needed. Period. And then my mom followed it up by saying Carlos Mendoza should start polishing up his resume, which you know what? Maybe he should. Carlos Mendoza, we might want to fire up that resume file. Because listen, David Stearns is at the top of my hit list right now for just how some things have not transpired, not worked out. We're crafty, we're creative, we're a genius. The genius is not panning out. Let's get into Carlos Mendoza for a minute though, because somebody does also have to answer for why this team isn't playing hard. I mentioned the Lindor mistake. There was multiple defensive miscues yesterday. I was loosely watching the game last night, but then I get home, I see like the highlights on my feed. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, it's just endless. Francisco Alvarez like makes a mistake on the base paths. It's just time after time. These are like basic, as Keith Hernandez would say, fundies, baseball fundamentals that we can't even do that. Somebody has to answer for this team and their actual on-field performance. And I think what's going on right now, it's just a mess. Like, then they throw Mendoza out to the reporters last night. Last night he actually was a little harsher with his messaging after the game. I have the quote here somewhere, but he was saying like, this is inexcusable. He was calling out the players a little more than he normally has. But I mean, it is high time to do that because the stuff that we're seeing out there is just inexcusable. It's crazy. Jorge Polanco, by the way, is hurt. Get Jorge Polanco out of the lineup. I don't want to see him out there for one more second. Put him on the DL. Call up Ronnie Mauricio again. Like, you can't tell me that Ronnie Mauricio DHing would be a better idea at this point than a hurt Jorge Polanco who can't even run. Brett Beatty's batting average is higher than his on base percentage. There's so much here, and then you're trotting Brett Beatty out to bat third in a game that you need to win last night. We didn't even get into game 2 of the series, which was actually the only time we had a flicker of hope. Nolan McLean goes out there and looks like Tom Seaver against Yamamoto, who also, of course, threw a great game. Great pitchers duel, phenomenal baseball game. You and I were sitting at work Tuesday night. Okay, is Nolan McLean, he's at 94, 95 pitches. Is he going to come out for the 8th? In a game like that, I hate to say it. I know you got to protect your young guys and get away from injury. Put Nolan McLean out there for the 8th inning because Carlos Mendoza yanked him. Brooks Raley came in, who actually has been decent and has been one of their better relievers. He had a bad night. Raley comes in. The wheels fall off the bus. The Mets lose a game that they certainly could have won. I do think, unfortunately, it's high time you're going to have to start to look at some of these decisions because the decisions are piling up to a really bad situation.
It's a multifaceted problem. And I texted you during that Nolan McLean game. I honestly feel for the guy. I know that he's going to go out there after the games and be like, well, it's a team mentality and all I want to do is win for the team and I need to be better. But honestly, it was a great game. He pitched a great game. That's not the first time that's happened and the Mets have still lost. It upsets you when Nolan McLean, frankly, has been the best pitcher that they've had all season and they continuously blow it when he's on the mound. I think, honestly, though, and this is really a question I even have for you. You say, leave Nolan McLean out there for an 8th inning. I agree with that. But would they have won that game anyway? Because that would have required them to score more runs than the Dodgers. I don't even know if I actually see that happening, even if Nolan McLean pitched 9 innings. I don't know that they would have gotten there.
I don't know if they would have either. And I of course, the McLean issue is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. The lineup is, of course, the problem. And I think we should address that, right? Lindor's ice cold. Okay, they're waiting on Soto to get back. But there's all this talk about Lindor and Soto. I'm sorry to say, Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto are the least of your problems right now, at least in terms of that lineup. Yes, it's a problem Lindor's not performing and that Soto's hurt. What the mix of players, which now, of course, it's hindsight 2020, right? I'm sure we would eat numerous things that we already said in the offseason optimistically about this lineup that was put together. But the mix of players, it's you got a washed up Jorge Polanco and Marcus Semien combined with guys that are just the young guys of Vientos and Beatty and Alvarez to a degree, but I think there's still some optimism surrounding Alvarez. Carson Benj, all right, he had a good night last night, but still, we don't know where we fall on that quite yet. The mix of guys is just whatever the vision was, it's not gelling together right now, right? Like, it's interesting how Stearns and Steve Cohen paired these veterans, kind of brought in new veterans when the old ones left, right, this offseason, of Polanco, Simeon, even Bo Bichette, a guy still on the younger side, but veteran presence these days, paired with these young guys that are underperforming and frankly haven't reached their potential yet. Like, we are the first ones to say that we love Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos. It's now or never for Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos, just in their major league careers. Forget about the Mets.
You know what's funny? I don't know why I'm thinking of this analogy, but this just reminds me. You ever see like you're like looking at the description of some coffee blend and it's like it's a beautiful blend of fall flavors and a little bit of crispy this and what, and then you
Yep.
taste the coffee and you're like, this
This
sucks.
is disgusting.
Like it was like decent branding, but it just sucks in reality. Like that's kind of how I feel about this, where it's like I feel like you and I both got on here and we were like, there's gonna be this really great mix of veteran leadership and young guys with energy. And frankly, what the actual result was bad coffee. It was old guys that were too old and young guys that were too young. Like it wasn't anybody in the middle. It wasn't anybody who had enough experience but also wasn't washed and who wasn't hurt but also understood the fundies. The outcome, the result, not aligned with the vision. Were there concepts of a plan? Perhaps. Was the plan executed? Perhaps not.
Perhaps, no, literally, perhaps not. And I won't even get into the player development piece right now because we don't have enough time, but I've said it before. You're the Mets. You have all these young guys you're excited about. Beatty, Vientos, Alvarez, Mauricio. I could continue to go down the list. Luis Angel Acuna, who's now in Chicago. Have any of them panned out? Because we're the first to say that we are still trying to be optimistic about Beatty and Vientos. Brett Beatty, I found the stat, has a 211 on base percentage to go with a 218 batting average, and he has not walked yet this season. Do you know how hard it is to have an on base percentage lower than your batting average? Like, what? How long are we going to give some of these experiments? It's honestly wild.
Yeah. No, I'm
Not,
actually glad. Go
no,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm actually glad that you brought that up because, like, just to really get into the weeds for a minute, Brett Beatty's plate approach is horrendous. The amount of times that I see that guy, in your words, trot up there, take the biggest hack I've ever seen on the first pitch thrown into the dirt and then have an 0-2 count and not be able to recover. I'll say this, it certainly happens more often than not. Certainly.
More often than not. Honestly, all the half the hitters on this team, their plate approach is a disaster. But I mean, he's just yet another factor in this lineup, right? 2 runs over the past 4 games. They got 16 hits total. In Los Angeles, they hit 137. Now, of course, Yamamoto, Ohtani, great pitchers they were facing, but honestly, that's not an excuse. Like, I do think that this Dodgers series was so painful for Mets fans because, yes, of course, right? It extended the losing streak to 8 games. We know the actual logistics. It just kind of illustrated how far away they are from the Dodgers, a team that Steve Cohen has said he wants to be competitive with, a team that pays their players almost the same amount of money at the Mets as the Mets. And I think that's where you get into some of these deeper systemic issues, right? Like the Dodgers go out there every single night. Sure, they have a ton of talent and a ton of great players, but they play hard. They're out there hustling on April 15th. They look like they're playing every game like it's game 7 of the World Series. And that's a separator alone. I think there's a lot to be said for making up for some talent discrepancies in the way you play the game. And we saw that kind of mojo from the 2024 Mets. And to be honest with you, we have not seen it since. I want to close with bringing up that the Mets, Steve Cohen spoke this week, midway through the Dodgers series, which was special. Scrolling through my bookmark tweets here, and I did see, I have to shout out this girl, April Glick. She had the funniest thing. She said, quote, "The Mets are not a baseball team so much as they are a psychological experiment." Would agree. Anyways, Steve Cohen said on Twitter at 1:24 a.m. after the second game of the series. Nobody likes to lose, but or sorry, the first game of the series. Nobody likes to lose, but I saw some green shoots tonight. On offense, Lindor had 2 hits, including a home run. Bichette got a double, hitting it to left field, as opposed to recently being right field prone. Bench got a solid hit. Soto started his running progression today. Simeon hit a shot that might have been a home run on a warmer night. Finally, Nolan McLean pitched an outstanding game going 7 innings. Hang in there, fans. We will turn this around. I am sorry. I know what he was going for, transparency. He likes to speak to the fans sometimes on his own Twitter. Saying that the home run, it may have been a home run on a warmer night. Carson Bench had a solid hit. Like, so Steve, you're just admitting that the bar is in hell, right? Like we can be Carson Bench got a solid hit is not gonna rejuvenate the fan base.
Juan Soto is running.
Great. I would hope so.
New York City is supposed to be the place where dreams come true, and yet, day in and day out, Ashley and I continue to live in this nightmare. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Why My Mets Fan podcast. We will see you back here when the next thing happens.
Bye.